dedicated to empowering you with information
to make positive choices
and be advocates for your overall well-being.
Welcome to The Health View. Welcome to The Health View. I'm Yvonne Dunetz, and today we're going to be talking about choosing our final place of rest. And my guest today is Jeffrey Snow. He is Superintendent of Cemeteries. Welcome.
Thank you.
Jeffrey, let's talk about the history of cemeteries. I know you are superintendent of how many cemeteries?
I oversee 5 different cemeteries in the city.
In the greater Nashua area or in the
Yes.
city of Nashua?
I'm a city employee.
Okay.
Take care of 5 municipal cemeteries.
And which ones are they?
We work out of Edgewood Cemetery, which is where most of our time is spent.
That's in Amherst Street, off of Amherst Street?
Correct, right along Amherst Street, across from Broad.
Mm-hmm.
And we take care of 4 others. Evergreen Cemetery, which is on Main Street at East Dunstable Road. That is the only other active cemetery with cemetery lots available for sale. And we also take care of the Old South Cemetery, which is on Danny Webster Highway with the little brick schoolhouse that many people are familiar with by the Royal Ridge Mall. And Hillside Cemetery, further out on Amherst Street from Edgewood, more or less across from Leda Lanes. And then Gilson Road Cemetery, which is a very small cemetery, obviously, on Gilson Road.
And how does one end up at any particular cemetery? How does one choose a cemetery?
Oftentimes it is where previously deceased family members are. Maybe your parents are there, or maybe there's already an existing lot that you can use.
Like a family plot?
Yes, and sometimes just geographic. You live in the neighborhood. Oftentimes, especially Edgewood being in the north end, we get a lot of families that live in the area because it is convenient. Otherwise, some people just come in and they might live in another community and have looked at some cemeteries and like the look and feel of one or another, and they decide to select a lot there.
And what is the oldest cemetery in the city of Nashua?
The oldest is the Old South Cemetery. Some people call it the Old Dunstable Cemetery because it was originally in Dunstable, and of course Dunstable encompassed a great area around here. And sometimes it is referred to as Little's Station Cemetery.
Why is that?
I have no idea, to be honest with you. I'm assuming there was some sort of a station there.
Like a railroad station, maybe?
Well, or maybe a coach stop. I really don't know.
Interesting.
I did not know that until somewhat recently, but it is sometimes referred to as that. That is the oldest. The oldest burial is back in the 1600s. I think 1687 or something along those lines.
Really?
Is the first burial there. Many of the stones are very interesting with the epitaphs and talk of Indians and other people that made the area what it is.
And where is that
back.
located again?
That's the one on the Danny Webster Highway.
Where the schoolhouse
with the little brick
is.
schoolhouse that all the 4th graders in the area go to, yes.
Very interesting. And what's the responsibility of a superintendent of cemeteries? Is this a similar responsibility throughout the country?
I would guess many cemeteries are larger and smaller, obviously. If you're in a small town, maybe Public Works oversees the cemetery and it's just a small part of their job. For me, it's a 40-hour or more week job.
And what do you do?
Well, we do just about everything you can imagine. Personally, I haven't done too much mowing lately, but obviously care of the grounds is probably the most time-consuming thing, with mowing and trimming and fertilizing and all that.
And that's part of perpetual care?
Yes. When you purchase a lot, it's under perpetual care. Essentially, that cares for, the grass. If you have other plants, shrubs, flowers, that is technically up to the lot owner to take care of. So care of the grounds is obviously the most time-consuming job. I have to be an administrator. I work with families, sell lots, work with funeral homes. They call, with a person who's deceased, and maybe they already have a lot. Maybe they're sending a family up to purchase one. Maybe they're coming with the family. And
And how may someone prepare for that in thinking this through? Is a lot something as we can prepare, perhaps, if we choose to, related to our own funeral arrangements, is part of that part of getting a plot? And how does one go about getting a plot?
Well, first, maybe decide what cemetery you're going to, whether that entails going around and just looking at some area cemeteries, driving through, thinking this is a nice cemetery versus that one, going to cemeteries and checking prices.
Do they differ?
I would say yes, they can differ between cemeteries. And if you've decided where, or maybe you're still trying to decide, then give a call or just stop in the office in our case. And, we're there 40 hours a week or more. And typically you would talk to me.
And what would be the information that you would need from people? How does one, because I'd like to make this as simple as we can for people to understand that this is not something that is scary or difficult to do. So if someone comes in and they're looking to find out if this would be a good place for their loved ones or themselves to have as their last resting place, what would they do? Was there information they would need to bring?
Well, the first couple of things that I usually ask them is cremation involved?
Okay.
How many parties are involved? Is it just for husband and wife, an individual? Have you spoken with your family? Do you have children or an extended family that's interested?
Is there a difference if someone is cremated versus if they are buried by casket?
Well, cremated remains can go into any lot in the cemetery, although we do offer lots strictly for cremation that are much smaller than a traditional grave space that would allow for casket burial. And the price, of course, is a little bit different because it's physically smaller. And we do allow monuments on some of the cremation lots. Most of our lots for casket burial allow for an upright monument. That would be the other thing, your memorialization.
Meaning what?
Or kind of a stone, I guess, is the kind of short version.
And do you take care of that, or what do people need to do related
to that? We do
not.
Then you would go to the monument dealer.
Okay.
And
then you give the size to them? What's the procedure related to them?
Well, if I speak with them and find out what it is they're interested in having, and size-wise, if they have a large stone in mind, they may need to purchase a larger lot to accommodate the stone other than just to accommodate the persons involved.
I see.
Or sometimes people just want a flat stone that's flush with the ground and aren't interested in a monument. We have different lots that would be priced a little differently according to the memorial. So the number of people, if cremation's involved, and then your memorial is probably the most important things other than just being comfortable in the surroundings and liking the area that you would have to select from.
And the cost related to it, how is that handled? I know related to prearrangements for those that need to do that, the plot is something that also needs to be done and taken care of. So how do people pay for it? Is it...
Well, we have no payment plans.
Okay.
Or I say we have one payment plan.
At the time of getting it?
When you purchase the lot, you would pay.
And at that time, what do you receive? In other words, if you're pre-planning it, what do you receive once you decide to purchase the lot?
Although I still often refer to it as a deed. Most cemeteries issued deeds for cemetery lots in the past. Okay. And now most cemeteries, this era, are issuing some sort of a license to bury or interment rights. Our document is issuing interment rights, where we used to say it was a deed as though you were purchasing the land, although you really didn't own that land. And now it's changed so that it's more descriptive of what you're actually getting. The right to use a particular spot in the cemetery to bury human remains is the short version on that.
So you're purchasing that space
to bury people in, and that is all that you are technically purchasing. Along with that, we give you certain rights
which are?
To put up a memorial, like we talked about, either an upright monument or just a flat stone, plant shrubs or maybe not, or plant flowers, etc. So, or how many persons are in there. And then perpetual care is actually the bulk of the cost. The license or the interment rights are about 20 to 25% of the cost, depending on the size of the lot. And the bulk of it, 75 to 80% of the cost, is for perpetual care. It goes into trust and is used to maintain the cemetery. Right now is around $6 million at Edgewood Cemetery to, well, keep the cemetery going long after we're all gone, so that the cemeteries continue to be well maintained.
And what happens, so a person has the plot, what happens related to the procedure at the time of death? How do you work with the funeral homes? Because you're preparing the lot
Right.
for the receiving of...
Well, these days things are very different, particularly with cremation.
Okay.
Usually with a casket burial, the funeral director would contact us. All the arrangements would be made going through the funeral director, so the family doesn't have to deal with us with lots of other things on their mind and to do at the time of someone's death, assuming they already have the cemetery lot. It's important to buy the lot, for me, ahead of time, because it's not something you need to take the time and make a major decision in your life when you have maybe a couple of days to take care of this. You know, we need time to prepare the grave, and you need time to hopefully make the correct decision. So the funeral director would contact us, and we would take care of opening and closing the grave, and really the family doesn't at that point have to be involved with the cemetery personnel at all.
What if they have a graveside service?
Well, still, it's usually, all coordinated with the funeral director.
Okay.
Graveside service is fine. I have no problem with talking to anybody at any point in time, but usually that's not what's really on their mind at the time of somebody's death and the burial. And with cremation, oftentimes it can still be done that way, where maybe there's a service in the church or the funeral home or elsewhere, and then the cremated remains come directly to the cemetery, or there's a graveside service and the burial at that time. But now, oftentimes people, with cremation, will maybe have a service and the body's cremated, and they will purchase a cemetery lot and wait until maybe the stone is up and ready to go, and then have a family gathering for the interment.
What if people wanted to wait and hold on to the remains in an urn until, let's say if it was a partner, the next one had their time, and so that they could be buried at the same time? Is that a problem?
Not at all. That's
Do
sometimes
people
happens.
do that?
Sure.
Can do that?
Or sometimes if one spouse passes and is cremated and the other is going to be a casket burial,
Right.
the remains of the cremated person are placed into the casket and they're buried together.
Wow.
So cremation makes things very
So you have
flexible.
that opportunity
Yes.
to do that. And it's just human remains?
Yes.
So if someone had a pet that they adored, that couldn't go in with them?
No.
Okay. So it's important for
Yes.
people to know.
We have had that come up on occasion.
Okay. And as far as after the burial, visitation to a cemetery's purpose is to provide peace to those that are coming to, in a sense, visit their loved ones at the cemetery. What happens? They can come any time?
Gates are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Typically someone's going to come during daylight hours. We're there Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 4:30 in the afternoon. Somebody's there. If they have any questions or need assistance in locating somebody, we're, of course, always happy to help with that. Otherwise, most people come in and they visit, and we welcome flowers, and there's water available all around the cemetery, so people can come in, water their flowers, pray, talk, just remember their loved one, whatever. People come in pretty regularly.
So the way you keep the cemetery up and keep it a peaceful, beautiful place, it's an opportunity for them to have a little bit of a reprieve as they come in. It's peaceful.
Yes, and I like to think it's a friendly place. I think our staff is friendly and willing to assist people with things. I don't think that it has to be an unhappy place to come and visit. It's like a park setting. And people sometimes say, how can you work in the cemetery? And I say, well, it's just like working in a park, except, every once in a while we do these other things.
It's so important to say, because some people have a little bit of hesitancy in even driving
Sure.
by a cemetery versus even going into it. So when you say it's like a park, in a sense it's a park for the living to be
Yes.
able to be present and remember and spend time with those that they love who have passed on.
People come in and I tell them, there's nothing that we can really do to help your loved one, but maybe we can try to, help you out at this time and make the future a little bit better for you. So,
That's beautiful.
well, thanks.
That really is beautiful. So what you're saying to them is that you're there to support them
Yes, that's all we can do at that
for
point.
the rest of their lives,
Right.
and to be a place that they would want to come to visit and to get that emotional, perhaps, support.
Right.
Are more and more people choosing to be buried in cemeteries, or are they doing things differently now?
I think in general fewer and fewer people are being buried in cemeteries. And
Why is that?
Well, I'm not really sure what the bottom answer is to all that. I think that society in general doesn't seem to look at cemeteries in the same way as they had in the past. I think when you had 2 and 3 or 4 generations all, still living right in the area, and there was a large family lot, and people, I think, put a little bit more importance on visiting the cemetery and that. And now with people all scattered around, oftentimes there really aren't relatives to come and visit, and it doesn't seem to me that people find the importance of visiting and remembering the loved one at a cemetery as they once did. Maybe they do it in a different way. I'm not sure. I obviously have a skewed view on that, where I think coming to the cemetery is an important place for people to remember their loved ones. With cremation, fewer and fewer people actually are buried in the cemetery, where several people either stay with their loved ones at home, hopefully in a respected manner, but sometimes not always, or maybe they're scattered at a favorite spot, whether it's a lake or an ocean or a mountain or whatever.
You can do that anywhere.
Well, you can. It's not always legal, but you can.
How would people find out what is legal or not? Where, if there are certain areas not to do it?
Well, some places, I am not 100% on all that. I know that the
Okay.
Clean Water Act has something to do with disposing remains in
I
the
see.
water, which isn't always observed. I think some of the national parks have restricted the scattering of remains because it's been popular, and they don't really want those remains just scattered everywhere.
Yes. Now, you're second generation working at that particular cemetery, correct? What was your
Yes, at that
dad?
particular cemetery.
Now, that must have great meaning to you.
Yes. Actually, I'm 4th generation of taking care of cemeteries.
Really?
I didn't know until a little bit more recently, but my great-grandparents, I say grandparents because apparently my great-grandmother and grandfather were sexton and sextoness of a churchyard cemetery in Exmouth, England.
Really?
And then my grandparents came from England, and my grandfather was at Woodlawn Cemetery, and then my uncle was at Woodlawn, and my father was at Edgewood, and now I'm at Edgewood. Not that I ever expected that was where I was going to be and most of my life, but
And when you were growing up, did you have the opportunity to go with your father
Oh, yeah.
to the cemetery?
yes.
And as a child, in order to help children also feel comfortable in a cemetery, how was it for you?
I didn't give it second thought. I never thought of a cemetery as a scary or... I guess I just grew up in the cemetery since I was a kid, so it was just another nice place to be in the outside.
Nice place to be. So what would it be about a cemetery that might make somebody feel a little scary?
Maybe just the thought of, being uncomfortable with, deceased people all around. I think there's, people who, concerned about, I don't know if I want to say ghosts and other things. I tell people I've been around cemeteries my entire life, not just Edgewood Cemetery, but others, and I've yet to see any ghost or goblins or anything spooky about that. So
Halloween related.
yeah, I've not.
Okay, that's
But
important.
apparently some people feel otherwise.
From your words, from your understanding of it, and having generations that have worked in this field, what would the words be that you would like people to know about the real truth about a cemetery and what they'll find there?
I think it's a friendly place, and hopefully they can find some sort of peace and comfort visiting their loved one or just walking through. We have a number of people who just walk in the cemetery because it's quiet and there's squirrels and birds and other natural things, trees and grass. Mm-hmm. Like I say, it's like a park, except you have to have a little bit of respect, hopefully, going through the cemetery.
And what would be the respect that people could provide in a cemetery when they enter a cemetery?
Well, on occasion we've had people that have decided they want to, toss a football around or other things.
That's unacceptable.
Well, it's not a park,
yeah.
Although we certainly encourage or don't discourage people from walking or riding their bicycles through. It's not a park if you want to do that. So maybe not playing and riding bikes and things over people's
or yelling.
Lots. Yes, we get some kids that after a while it's time to
it's
move
more
them
of a
along.
peaceful
Yes.
place.
Yes.
And related to the historical reference, a cemetery does have a lot of history in it.
Yes.
You were referencing that before.
Well, like I
What
said,
are the types of history? If we were trying to help people to understand the history.
Well, like I said, the Old South Cemetery on the DW Highway is the oldest in the city. Edgewood Cemetery is a little interesting, where it was officially, the land was purchased by Nashville in 1843, where the town of Nashua, and then Nashville, not to go too much into the history of Nashua, but where the residents on the north side of the Nashua River annexed themselves from the town of Nashua, and it was Nashville for a time, and they needed a cemetery. So in 1843, a year after the split, the first land purchase, which is right along Amher Street, was made. And there were subsequent purchases here and there. It was kind of cobbed together until it's I think final size right now. 1905, there was Forest Street, still ran all the way through from Ashland Street all the way down to Cushing Avenue, and has been discontinued sometime in the teens. So,
you also have a chapel there.
yes.
When did that come about? Because isn't that unusual for a cemetery to actually have a chapel on site?
Well, back in the day, I don't think that it was, although maybe not quite so popular now.
Is it ever used?
Occasionally.
Can people have services there before
Yes.
their loved one is buried?
Certainly.
And how would they go about having those services there?
Well, they would contact me directly, or if they were working with a funeral home, they could contact me and make the arrangements for that.
So is there an additional fee to use that if you have a plot there already?
Yes.
There is.
There is a $200, I want to say $200 to $250. I'm not 100%.
And that's set up where people could go in there
Yes.
and have a service, especially if it was raining. If they had a graveside
It's a very small-
plan, they could go in.
Yes, it's small.
How many people could go in
but
there?
very beautiful.
Is it?
I would say it would seat maybe 50, might be
50?
snug.
And what does it look like inside from an
Well, it's a
historical?
granite chapel, and on the inside, it was recently redone. It was built in the 20s, and there really wasn't money to care for it. So it had kind of fallen into, well, not kind of, it had very much fallen into disrepair. Granite exterior wasn't too bad, but the interior was in pretty bad shape. So family in Nashua was a benefactor, and we benefited with over $50,000 to fix the chapel. So the pews were all refinished, and the floors done over, and wooden floor on part of it was refinished, and the walls were all redone and painted, and the exterior was repointed, and it was really came out quite nice.
So it's for any denomination or no denomination at all, spiritual, whatever, just for anyone to have use
The
of
whole
it.
cemetery is open for pretty much anybody.
Is that chapel also open if anybody's visiting the cemetery to go in and have peace?
On occasion, although I did open it for a little while this spring once the weather got good, and it didn't seem to be getting a lot of traffic through, so I
Perhaps people didn't
kind of got a
realize
little
that
bit
there's that
lazy and
gift
didn't
there.
open it every day any
Well, if we
longer.
were to summarize, what is the most important information that you'd want people to know about how to get a plot, what they need to do, and to consider about planning to have their place of rest in a cemetery?
Think about whether you're looking for casket burial or cremation.
Okay.
maybe speak with other family members, see our most popular, clientele, if you will, would be a husband and wife looking for a cemetery lot for the two of them. As I'd said, a long time ago, it would be an entire family, so a 10, 12, or larger grave lot was not uncommon. Now, with families scattered, that's different. So I think how many people are involved, maybe you have family local that would be interested in all being buried together.
And even if people are away, their body can be
They
brought
certainly
to
can.
the
So
cemetery.
have that conversation, decide who is involved, and what kind of burials are involved. And then, of course, it's important what cemetery you're looking at, whether you just drive through some cemeteries and say, oh, I like this one, or maybe you don't like that. And then if you need, stop at various cemeteries and see what their prices are, or what their policies are.
Can you Google that and get that information in any location of the United States, as wherever you are, where there are cemeteries?
Oh,
and
certainly I think you can find cemeteries. I'm not sure how much information you can always find out about the different ones.
Now, in the ones that you oversee, do people need to make an appointment in order to speak with you, in order to get a plot and to learn what they need to do, or can they just show up?
They can just show up.
Okay.
Although I do not discourage anybody from making an appointment. I try not to make it sound quite so necessary, even if somebody called and said, hey, I'd like to come by at 10 o'clock this morning, and then I can tell them, well, there's a service going on, or I'm not available, or we'll make sure there's somebody in the office to greet you, because there's not always somebody sitting right in the office waiting for somebody.
So it's not a difficult process to go
Not at
through,
all.
and that you'll easily be able to help people be able to see where lots are available, what it takes to do that, and it truly is a simple process, correct?
Sure.
That's wonderful. So is there anything online on the website of the city where people can learn about the particular cemeteries that we have?
We do have, our prices are listed, our
At nashua.gov?
NashuaNH.gov.
Okay.
And then you have to kind of search around. There is a cemetery, a search, if someone's looking for a body, they can do a search through the city's
To
website
find out
as
where
well.
someone's buried.
And we can obviously help them find that location if they need
Excellent.
help.
Well, we thank you for everything that
Certainly.
you do. We appreciate it very much. Until next time.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.